we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discourse TM trademarked. I came up with it. No, it was Vanispheres. Thank you, Vanny, for coming up with this wonderful name for this show. I have never come up with any of the names for any of my stuff. Class in the Glass, not me. That was a friend. Discourse, some other guy. Vanispheres, you know him. But this is episode 2, and we are talking about one of my favorite animated shows of all time, Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically season 1, book 1, Water. I want to give each person time to talk about how they first watched this, how they were first exposed to it, and then we'll go into the details about the characters and the arcs and the animation and all that. I do want to briefly say this is created by Michael DiMartino and Brian Konecko, or whatever his name is. No, I can never remember the creators of this show, this thing I grew up on and love and watch. I never remember their names, but you know who they are. All respect to them for creating such a wonderful animated series. Vanispheres, I was just giving you all the credit in the world, good sir, for coming up with the name Discourse. I was saying I have never, all my stuff is based on other people's naming ideas. But it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, my friend.
Thank you kindly. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Yes, the producers and the creators of the show, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konecko. I totally said their names correctly in the beginning. You heard it here first. But I did want to talk about my first exposure to the show. And I'm very privileged. I'm very privileged, guys, because I remember when this first debuted all the way back in 2005. And the thing was, let's turn the clocks back here. How I was consuming content, particularly Nickelodeon, I was kind of on the way out. This was during the time, it might have even just been a few years, maybe before the release of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I kind of stopped watching a lot of Nickelodeon content. I got a little older. I wanted darker animation, that kind of thing, more mature animation, if you will. And I kind of had phased out of SpongeBob. That's when I really stopped watching SpongeBob, like around 2003, 2004. It was around the time the first movie. And I think Cat Dog was already gone. Harold was already gone. Rugrats, I think, was already gone at this point. I think even the Old Grown Up might have already finished and things. So a lot of those 90s era Nicktoons that I love, Rocko's Modern Life, Doug, all that shit. That was kind of coming to an end, and they were doing new stuff. And not speak ill of a lot of that content. I don't know, it just didn't capture my interest. And so I was kind of on the way out for a lot of Nickelodeon shows, but then I started seeing previews and teasers. This is pre-YouTube, you gotta remember. This is pre-YouTube. And so I started seeing commercials for Avatar: The Last Airbender. And this was around the time when I started to watch a lot of anime. When, I already watched stuff like Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, I think had already come out at this point. And so I was being exposed to a lot of this, a lot of Hayao Miyazaki stuff. And so that was definitely where I was oh wow, I'm really Spirited Away had come out several years ago. And I think a lot of people of our generation who were watching animation in the 2000s were being exposed to that for the first time. And then when I saw Avatar: The Last Airbender, I was oh, this looks interesting. I had never seen a Nickelodeon show that looked like that, because we're so used to the super Western cartoony, the SpongeBob's, the Ren, everything that was inspired by Ren and Stimpy. And to see something like that, I was what is this? And I remember when I think they put out both episodes back to back. It was they had a pilot, a 15-minute pilot, but they did the Boy in the Iceberg and the Avatar Returns. I remember watching these, and I remember oh, this is like an American version of an anime. Everyone says Avatar: The Last Airbender is not anime, but I mean it practically is. It's at the very least heavily inspired, and I just love this. It was a combination of anime and superpowers, where you can control the elements, whether it be fire, air, or earth, or water. I thought that was so cool. And I remember oh my God, I know that voice actor. It's fucking Rufio. He's the villain of the show. That's amazing. And seeing those first 2 episodes, it just made me immediately invested in the series. And, watching, every week when it came out, so excited for the release eventually of season 2, and eventually when we getting season 3. I'm very happy to say that I was right there in the beginning watching this show. And it's to me, it's remained one of my favorite animated shows of all time, if not my favorite. I want to just go down the line and ask each of you, But Deadpool, how were you first exposed to Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Well, my experience is kind of like yours. Like, I'm
Mhm.
only a year younger than you.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, it's like I watched it when it first premiered, and I was around the same age where, like, I was starting to bounce off a lot of the stuff Nickelodeon was putting out because it was geared more towards younger kids.
Yes.
And I was into a lot of the anime stuff that like Toonami was putting out, like, Dragon Ball Z, Gundam, all that stuff, Cowboy Bebop. So when I saw Avatar: The Last Airbender and seeing how much it was influenced by anime, I was like, okay, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And also what was interesting about it dealt with more darker, more serious subject matter, while still retaining a lot of that child TV show elements to it. It was the first season itself was a really good mix of that.
No, I agree with you. There is it did season 1 definitely is the one that is the most for children, I would say. And then by the time we get to season 2 and then 3, it starts to get a lot darker. Because that's like, hey, we're coming down the end of the line here. Got to beat the Fire Lord at this point. Got to prevent another genocide. But you're right. Like it did have the most kid sensibilities, but it still, still tackled that dark material. I mean, they mentioned genocide in the 3rd episode of season 1. We see
Not only
all that
mention
dead
it,
people.
yeah. Not only mention it, we see the aftermath of it.
Yes, yeah. So very good point. So yeah, just like me, you saw at an early age. Ace Rock, what about yourself, Thomas? What about yourself? How were you first exposed to this show?
So, 2005, I was out of college by then, I think. So for me, I was definitely way outside the demographic that the show was aimed at, and it definitely did not appeal to me for a variety of reasons. But the one thing I did notice about it was there's definitely that school of American-made anime and manga, where you see a lot of artists who grew up, like, obviously influenced by this stuff. And for me, I grew up reading a lot of manga and manhwa, which is it's the Korean word for manga. So I grew up reading Akira, like Appleseed, Ghost in the Shell,
right,
like anything by Katsuhiro Otomo and Masamune Shirow were like huge for me. And that was like back like my, and also Lone Wolf and Cub was probably one of my biggest ones I was really into. So when I saw it, I think I had a really just shitty attitude about it. Because I looked at it as being like, oh, this is like Nickelodeon cashing in and being a bunch of just like culture vultures and taking the stuff that I love and just commodifying it as if anime and manga didn't do that to itself already.
Right.
So for me, it wasn't until much later where I'm now a father and my son is 9 years old. And I am desperately trying to get him to watch this show because I feel like it totally like the way I've gotten him to kind of engage with it, because it definitely is in his wheelhouse. I got the comic books, like the trade paperbacks from the bookstore,
right,
and I leave him in the backseat of the car. So on days that he isn't allowed to have his Switch, I look in the rearview mirror and he's reading Avatar, and I'm like, good, it's working.
Nice. Manipulating him. Very good.
Yeah, and I try to but it's funny is that he's a sensitive boy. He doesn't like watching violence.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like I tried showing him Marvel's What If, and he was like, Dad, I don't know. This is just too much for me.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
But he, so there's but in any event, I think I'm glad that I'm having an opportunity to review the material, because when it first came out, I was just too closed-minded to accept it, and so I'm looking forward to Caillou getting into it.
No, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, just exposing your son to that kind of thing, and I kind of it's I love how your initial reaction to the show is just so different than Deadpool and my own's. Just how like you were already heavily exposed to anime beforehand, and manga, and hearing you talk about it, I wonder if a lot of people, when people are already who have already immersed in that material, that medium, when they saw Avatar: The Last Airbender, they had maybe a similar mindset as you did, where it's like, oh, this is like baby's first anime. It's like when I think of anime, when I think of baby's first anime, things that come to my mind immediately are like Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z or even Pokemon or something like that. And I wonder if like maybe that, because I just don't know. That's really just a thing to explore. I think later on, like, did Avatar have a tough time initially? Because I think now it's beloved. But did it initially have a tough time winning over anime fans who are like, I already know what you're doing? That's very interesting. That's a cool point. I wonder if there were more people like that. But no, thank you for sharing perspective. Austin, what about yourself? How were you first exposed to the show?
So I'm kind of the reverse of maybe you and Deadpool, of where I think as a kid and as younger than a lot of people here, I was like, my cartoons, anime was a part of that. Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, all those kind of like anime shows that were done for kids. And even like as a kid as well, my older brother tried to get me into Bleach and Naruto, which I really just couldn't get into. I think I was probably just too young and didn't understand. Like, so it's English. I don't know. I didn't understand what subs and dubs mean. But kind of compared to you, I loved all those like Nicktoons and like Danny Phantom and My Life as a Teenage Robot and El Tigre. Like, I love a lot of those shows because those were like, I was like and so I remember in Canada when Avatar premiered and when like Avatar premiered and watching that and like watching and being like, well, this show is. I remember it being different, but still kind of accepting it because I'd seen anime. I'd seen like I'd seen children's anime basically at that point, and so it didn't seem so much. And I think I was more of a fan of like the first season, and like I kind of rewatched it. I still have to kind of finish rewatching it, but even rewatching, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the first season pretty well. I feel like for the later seasons, I never really saw it on TV as much. I remember season 1, and then I remember being like, holy shit, Aang has hair now? What's going on in this show? I thought it was, and then like, but yeah, and I think looking back on it, it's such a crazy show as a kid because of how dark it got and what places it went for a show that was put on like a children's network next to like SpongeBob and whatnot.
Yeah, fully agree. No, I fully agree with you. No, that's interesting how you remember it being for specifically in season 1 how it premiered on television. And so yeah, I guess you weren't watching it consistently. You were watching it like week to week or when it did have its specific release schedule for its various seasons. That's interesting. I guess it was very different where I remember when season 3 was coming out because they took like 2 years in between season 2 and season 3. Because like season 2 was immediately next year after the release of the book 1, Water. Because book 1, Water, came out in 2005, and then book 2 came out in 2006, Earth. And then we had to wait like 2 more years. I was like, damn it, because book 3 came out in 2008. And so I was just like at a fever pitch. I was like, I was so excited for it. So I wonder if that because of that 2-year wait, like a lot of people fell off of it. Because you're like, oh, Jesus, it hasn't been on for so long. Which I guess is weird to have like a specific series that just goes off for like, now we're used to it, in this age of streaming culture where, Rick and Morty goes off for 3 years and it comes back for season 4 or 5 or something. But like back then they were used to like every single year a new season and things like that. So I think maybe a lot of people fell off. No, that's interesting to hear that. Now, Chris Ayers, I know that you have you have watched some of it and you recently watched it again, but what was your first exposure and now coming back to it? What do you think of it so far?
Well, my first exposure to it is kind of similar to Ace Rocks, but not completely. So the show came out when I was 8 years old, and I'd seen commercials for it on Nickelodeon because I was still watching like SpongeBob and Fairly Odd Parents and all that stuff. And so I watched it, and I don't know. I wouldn't say I was too young for it or anything. I think my tastes just hadn't expanded to where I could like accept and enjoy something like that. It wasn't the type of cartoon that I was used to. Like I was still very much in the like full-on SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, all the more goofy kiddie stuff,
Sure.
and that just didn't grab me immediately. I still like watched a few episodes, like just to try to get into it more, but it wasn't something that really grabbed me. And then watching it again now that it's on Netflix, and I've grown to be more open to this kind of stuff. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm digging the characters and the action scenes and the world and everything.
That's interesting because we have like a lot of different generations just talking right now. You know, people who are my age, people who are much younger than me, like yourself, and then people who are older than me. I kind of like that we've shown just like how we've been exposed to the show in different ways and like in different times, and I think that's very interesting. Stefan, what about yourself? How did you first watch the show?
Yeah, so for me, I was much the same as Chris, where I was in love with the show before it even started. I'd been watching commercials and everything, and I believe I was 10 at the time. So I was also big into the My Life as a Teenage Robot, Danny Phantom, and everything. And just seeing, the show at first and just seeing the art and everything, I was just ready for something new because to me, it was a new form of animation. I mean, as far as anime went, most I had watched was like Pokemon and Digimon. So it was just something for me to jump into. And Nickelodeon by that time already had full kid trust.
Yes.
So, just remembering that first episode and how it starts off and it's so lighthearted. And then all of a sudden you jump in and then you just have that total switch in the middle of that first episode when around the last third where Aang actually finds out what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
That I was hooked.
I think for a lot of people, that's when they were their first, because it does start. Yeah, we have that that preamble. That's like, okay, here's the setting of the world, Fire Nation, they attack and all that shit. And Avatar's been gone for 100 years, but it doesn't really hit you until you're seeing people who've been emotionally affected by it, like Katara with losing her mother, Katara and Sokka losing their mother, and Aang with in the third episode where he realizes that his father figure has been murdered 100 years ago. He wasn't there for it. And another point, like I do think like much like you and Osnick, like how you first started watching like early anime or certain Nicktoons. I think for a lot of people this is a gateway anime, if you want to consider an anime hybrid. So in a way it's very similar to Cowboy Bebop, where yes, it's obviously delving into Eastern and Western, or excuse me, Eastern cultures and mythology. But it is that kind of thing where it's also a very American cartoon. I think in the way that the characters speak to each other, because it's written by Americans. And so I think
the humor is American.
Yes, and I think that's why it has that appeal to Western audiences, and that's when you expose people to this specific show, then you literally open the doors to them for all other types of anime, whether it be Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo or Appleseed or Gundam or whatever. I think it's a very important gateway anime in that way, much like Cowboy Bebop is. Cassie, what about yourself? How were you first exposed to this show?
Well, I'd say the same way that you were. I was 14 when it came out, and I was just starting high school. It was a turbulent time, so I was already drawn to stuff like really fantasy type stuff, anime type stuff that's not afraid to get dark. Like I was already kind of a dark person, and unfortunately I wasn't able to stick with the show the way I wanted to, because like my dad and we had satellite TV. We didn't have cable. I don't even know to what extent on demand and DVR or anything was accessible compared to how it is now, but whenever I fell behind on it, I couldn't just catch up the way other people could, like if they were able to buy the DVDs or something. So I think someone else mentioned it's like 1 minute you're on season 1 and the next minute it's like, oh, Aang has hair, what happened? And like one of my biggest regrets was that I couldn't catch up the way I was able to now as an adult using Netflix. And I mean, it could have also been Nickelodeon's fault. People are saying it didn't seem to be airing as much. And
that's true. You're right.
I don't think they knew how to handle it. And it kind of reminds me of how I think Cartoon Network had similar issues with Toonami and, You know, when they would air certain animes, like I was a huge fan of Sailor Moon growing up, and they didn't air all of that because some content was deemed like inappropriate for Cartoon Network. So it's like I'm happy that as an adult now I can gain access to anime content and rewatch The Last Airbender like start to finish and everything, and it's still so relevant too.
Oh, fully agree. Yeah, even to this day, more so I think now than ever. It's just one of those shows that is always timely, especially because of the topics that it's dealing with, whether it be war or genocide or you know, racism, sexism. It covers everything. It's interesting. Yeah, I think because if we forget, like, this show is over 15 years old now. It doesn't even feel that because I think it just holds up so well. But it's like, it's crazy to think this show's going to be 20 years old very, very soon. By 2025, it'll be 20 years old. And yeah, if you didn't watch it when it first aired, it's hard to get on because I mean, we forget like this. Yes, I think a lot of us had personal computers at home or a family computer in the mid 2000s, right? But the internet was still evolving. It was still working out all these different kinks, and so it was hard to like watch these online. Even if you could, I mean, could you even? This is before this even time like Netflix was, I think, even around, right? So it was Blockbuster was still around. So you have to remember that.
I was still getting DVDs in the mail from Netflix at this point.
So there you go. It was just difficult to keep up with a series like that. You only had to rely on, you know, when it did come on Nickelodeon, and then of course it did have that sporadic release schedule. Like as I said, between book 2 and book 3, they had that nearly 2 years. And I was like, Jesus Christ, when's the next season coming out? So it was long. It's not like it is now. I'm glad you brought that up. How it was initially maybe difficult to watch this series because of its release schedule. Whether you had satellite, you had cable, you didn't have any of that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was looking at the Wikipedia page. Apparently, season 3 actually came out a year later. It wasn't 2 years.
Oh, it was a year later? Okay. Well, it felt like 2 years to me. God damn it.
Yeah, because you were so young.
I was so young and I was so impatient. I need my avatar. He needs to kill Mark Hamill. It needs to happen. And Xavier, what about yourself, sir? How were you first exposed to the show?
So I was first exposed to the show, you know, when it first came out. Like I remember seeing the commercials for it, but unfortunately, I didn't have a cable or satellite, or there was no way for me to get Nickelodeon at the time, and so I was just like, you know, Avatar is the one show that everyone was talking about that I just couldn't finish. But one thing I do remember when I was a kid was like how epic the commercials for it were. You know, they would say like, "Oh, watch this like 2-part event," and I always remember that as a kid. I was like, "Man, I wish I could watch the show." And then, but even when it came on other streaming platforms, I don't remember in particular, but like it might have been on Hulu, it might have been on Netflix, you know, at one point, and I still couldn't like get through it. I just couldn't get past the first season. I was just like, you know, I'm trying to watch this, but I couldn't get past it. It wasn't until I think last year, like late last year or early this year, that I actually finished the show, and I was like, wow, like I now see what I've been missing for the past couple of years. You know, this show's amazing. I don't know if we're getting to spoilers, but it has like it has one of my favorite characters in animation. It has one of my favorite moments, maybe like two of my favorite moments in animation. One of my favorite fight scenes. Like this show was just amazing from top to bottom. The first season, I believe, is a little tough to get through, but I feel like once you hit season 2, like you just cannot stop. It's just really good.
We'll definitely go into our favorite moments of specifically book 1. That's what I want to primarily cover because there's so many great moments throughout this entire series. So many great characters, new characters. You know, they're part of the principal cast who aren't even in season 1. It's like Toph isn't in season 1. People forget, and like people always associate her like, oh yeah, she was with the game at the beginning. Like, no, she wasn't. So there's a lot. There's a lot to it. So no, we'll definitely talk about like our favorite moments and favorite scenes, and we'll talk about the incredible fight choreography in a bit too. That's the other thing too, just the how the characters move. And not only the blending of kung fu and mixed martial arts and everything like that, but also they use the elements with that mixed martial arts, which is so much fun. So we're definitely going to talk about all that. But also, Vanny, I want to go ahead and ask you, how are you first exposed to this series?
So I experienced this one fairly late. It came out in 2005, which was right around my junior year of college, and I was working full-time and going to school full-time, and really didn't have a lot of time to do much outside of those two things. So completely missed the bandwagon.
Mm.
And when I did start to finally hear about Avatar, I just associated Nickelodeon with just kids stuff, like the Danny Phantoms, the Fairly Odd Parents, stuff like that. And my brain just said, okay, it's like that. Don't need to worry about it. I kind of like the way other folks have been chatting about it, is viewed as like somebody's first anime. And by that point, at that point in my life, I was fairly heavy into anime. So I was like,
Right.
okay, so I don't need the training wheels. I can just kind of keep watching what I was watching. And then just kind of forgot about it. Like I was dealing with family stuff after that, and then I was in grad school, and then I just started working after that. And I'd always had heard of Avatar, but just nobody in my circle of friends ever really avidly talked about it.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I don't remember exactly where. It may have been an IGN article or just something random I saw on the internet of like the top 100 cartoons of all time.
Right.
And Avatar was ridiculously high on the list. And I was like, like stuff like Danny Phantom, Fairly Odd were way, way lower, if at all on there. I think SpongeBob was on there just for its cultural impact. But I saw, I was like, fucking really? And it wasn't until I was talking to a little cousin of mine, and she'd asked me, "Oh, you're into anime?" And by that point, I kind of fell out of it. I said, like, "Well, no, not really, not anymore." And I asked her why, and she said that she just gotten into watching Avatar on Netflix. I was like, "Oh yeah, I've always heard of that one, and I've always heard it was really good." And she was like, "No, like you really need to sit down and watch this." And it was a family member that I really want to kind of get closer to, and kind of like now she's like a little sister to me now.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, you know what? She's making the effort to reach out. Like she'd also told me to watch things like Jane the Virgin and a couple other shows that I was like, okay, I'll like it's one where you say like I'll get to it when you really know you're not. No, you're not. But Avatar was like, you know what? It like that. I kind of took it as a sign. Like if the internet's saying it's amazing, if she's saying it, like and like, all right, let's do it. And it was something that kind of brought us closer together too, because she absolutely loved it, and I started watching it and. Yeah, I get it now. Like I was shocked with its level of maturity, and like it also taught me like just because it says Nickelodeon on there doesn't mean it's instantly for a 5-year-old. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's
that one.
That's one. Yeah, no, I agree. It's like it was so unlike a lot of, and it still is to this day, so unlike a lot of Nickelodeon shows. I think it's when it came out, people were just like, "What is this?" It just took people aback. It's great that you're able to bond with someone over that show. That's a great way to do it, I think, watch it together. And you mentioned, like Netflix. I remember when it first came to Netflix, that was a big deal. Like when Seinfeld, I remember when Seinfeld came to Netflix, that was a big deal. Some people were watching, it was trending. And Avatar: The Last Airbender was fucking trending on Twitter for like back like what 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. I think it was during the pandemic. It might have been early as the pandemic. And I saw like Aang and Zuko and Katara trending on Twitter. I was like, oh my God, is it 2005? Is it 2008? This is crazy. And so I think because it was just so readily available, people mentioned like they missed it or they only watched the first season or because of the crazy release schedule, they just weren't able to keep up with it. That this, really having on a streaming service where all of it's just right there. All these people that were at least interested or heard about it, now they could finally start watching it. And I think it's just exposed so many more people to it. And I think that's why it's kind of reignited interest in the series overall. That's what we're getting. We're still getting the comics and we're getting that live action show and we're possible. I mean, we're getting a whole studio, being run by the two creators with new Avatar content coming. I don't know if that just helped revitalize it or made Nickelodeon go, shit, maybe there's more to this than we thought. Maybe it shouldn't just be Aang and Korra and that's it. It's like let's continue this on. So no, it's interesting. I'm happy that so many people have been exposed to this years later. And what's so good about it is just it's aged so well. I think it's just the material and those characters and how you can attach yourself to someone because there's so many different personalities in this. I want to talk about the characters in a bit, but one of the main things I want to discuss. I want you guys just to chime in if let's let you do your thing, or I'll select individual people. But the setting and the themes that this show plays around with, I think, are amazing. Like I love that even though it's a very American show, it's in terms of its dialogue and its writing, there's no doubt that it's heavily inspired by East Asian cultures and mythology. I mean, Aang's culture, the Arab nomads, they're Buddhist monks. You have the Fire Nation, which is obviously Imperial Japan. You have the Earth Kingdom, which seems to be like an amalgamation of different cultures, whether it be Chinese or Korean. And then, of course, you have, the Water Tribes, which is very, representative of Inuit and Native American cultures. What did you guys, just kind of, what do you think of the world of Avatar, or just seeing these cultures represented in this way? How do you feel about that?
So this is something that I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about or not, because
You still there, Thomas?
No.
Are you still there? He went out. He went out briefly.
He might have to hang up
Oh,
and come back.
Oh no, we got you. You here?
you
Man?
got me?
Yeah, we
Okay,
got you.
sorry, I
Go ahead.
just had to adjust my microphone.
No problem.
So for those who don't know me, I'm half Korean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did he cut out again?
And
You
that's
cut out
that. That's it. I rest my fucking case.
It's valid.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, I love it. No, I fucking love it. I'm half Korean. There you
I
go.
am this.
Yeah.
So
Some
being,
bullshit. You go ahead.
so being that I grew up Asian but passed as a white person,
Mhm.
like I've always been really like sensitive to like trying to like be as like in touch with my Asian like my Asian heritage as much as possible.
Mhm.
Particularly growing up where I wasn't around other Asian people. So when I see Avatar, one of the things that I always get really like that is, and I am admittedly very sensitive to this, is I struggle with is this a white person's idealization or kind of like their romanticization of what Asian people are like, or is it Asianness as a costume? Is it Asianness as a, I mean, particularly when you're talking about the vast differences between China, Japan, Korea, and
Right.
and always gets forgotten are people from Southeast Asia.
Mhm.
I think if all the stuff that I've watched through or seen or exposed from Avatar or Legend of Korra, you don't see any references to people who are Filipino, people who are Vietnamese or Thai.
True.
It's and so now I'm not saying this is a criticism of the creators. I don't think, I think that they're honest and earnest in their intentions in creating and crafting the story that they are. But it can't be. I'm not a and you, people who know the property better can correct me if I'm wrong. But as far as I'm aware, from the production standpoint and the writing and directing standpoint, it's white men who created this show. Is my understanding.
They are the head. Yes.
Yeah,
There are
so-
two Korean. There are other writers of various ethnicities and cultural backgrounds and things, but the
'Cause I know that
two creators are white. That's correct.
And I think too, like, and to be fair to the show, and like, and I'm not trying to be critical of the show
Sure.
as being. I'm not saying that based on on what I'm saying right now. I'm not
Mhm.
trying to say this is a bad show. I'm not
Mhm.
saying that at all. It's objectively an excellent show. I mean, if I didn't think that way, I wouldn't be exposing my son to it.
Mhm.
I just think that one of the things that is, it's always been something that's always jumped out to me as being something that was, I think that also might have been another reason why when it first came out, as to why I kind of bounced off it at first.
Right.
But I definitely do, because I know the topics of racism and genocide and all those things, and I think sexism are topics that they do tackle in the show, and are constant themes throughout the show, which is great and that's important. But I do, it always kind of sits back in my mind, like is this a celebration of or representation of Asian of different Asian influences, or is this really just because it looks cool? You know, like is it like are we going to take all these different images of what we think Asian people are like, or or do or sound or feel, and using it almost as a costume. So that's just always something that's been in the back of my mind whenever I think about this particular show.
No, I think it's a good question to ask, and whether you like the show or you don't, I think that's totally fine. This is just here to discuss it, and so we can talk about the things maybe we don't like about this series. I have no problem with that at all. You bring up a great point. I think it's because it's very easy for me because you're someone who is I don't know that much about other Asian cultures that aren't Korean, Chinese, and Japanese, and I think that's for a lot of people. Especially for me as a white man who has lived in America, who's my ancestors were Polish, German, and Irish, and so I don't know that much about Asian cultures, and it feels like the series is definitely borrowing from the ones that people maybe in America know the most about or have a lot of exposure through animation, exposure through films. That kind of thing. And most of those have come from, I think for a lot of Americans who think of East Asian cinema, we've seen Chinese movies, we've seen Korean movies, we've seen Japanese movies, whereas we haven't seen too many other Southeast Asian movies. And I can imagine the creators of the show, DiMartino and Kotsuneko, or whatever the hell I say his name, they were more exposed to the stuff like I was exposed to, and they're wearing the influences on their sleeves, I think. And so I don't know for sure, but that's the sense I get. But I do think that they're trying to be as respectful as possible. They are pulling from history, whether it be the way in which these nations operate, the way in which kind of like their cultures are, or even like their aesthetics. I feel like that, but you could bring up a good point. Like, is every single Southeast Asian culture represented in the series? Probably not. I wouldn't say. Maybe someone who does know these things can speak better of that, but I don't really see that. But at the same time, I personally feel, and I might be speaking of just my own ignorance, that they do the best job possible and not trying. I don't think they ever try to be offensive or make these cultures or these nations or the representatives, the characters, stereotypical anyway. I never got that sense from them. And does anyone else want to talk about like the general setting of the show, something that really spoke to you or stuck out to you, or the themes of it? There's so many things we can go into in regards to the genocide, about war, and this can kind of be like baby's first war story in a way. We have an entire nation that's like, yeah, we're all about world domination. We're going to use our advanced resources to take you over, or we're going to kill all of you. Like, does anyone else want to speak to that?
Well, as I was rewatching it, I kept thinking about how things are right now, like with the government and with everything we just went through with Trump, and then plus the pressure of global warming and everything else. And I was very much reminded of it watching these characters just slowly adapting to these basically post-apocalyptic conditions as the show goes on. And it's like, I'm not going to get too spoilery with it, but I just, all I could think was, wow, they were forced to grow up so fast. And you can see them learning how to have all of these regular, normal life type moments in the midst of all this devastation. They have moments where they're laughing together, goofing around, trying to have dating lives, because this is their normal. They're still living their lives while also under pressure of like needing to save the world, which a lot of young people today feel like they have to save the world.
No, that's a very good point. And you're right about that. It's like, if you look at the characters, I want to talk about more of the characters in a minute, but it's like Sokka and especially Katara, like this is their norm. They're aware of this war that has been going on. They've suffered from it. And, Sokka wants to play soldier boy, not maybe realizing thoroughly enough like what he needs to do in order to properly do that. But Katara seems to be the one who is definitely the most mature of those characters. And she's the one that's fucking narrating the opening, saying like, this has been going on for 100 years. My father is gone. My mother is dead. And then when we encounter Aang and he's the savior of the world, but unlike Sokka and Katara, he still wants to be a kid. He still wants to be a child. He still wants to he still is trying. He's projecting that normalcy, even on his friends. It takes him a while to finally get like, oh shit, this is serious. this is really serious, and there's big consequences, and I've been gone for so long, and so much has changed. So many people are dead. So many people are suffering, and you realize it when whether it be Qatar or soccer or just the people around him. Like you gotta get with the game now. You're right. I really like that, and you can absolutely compare it to our world and what people are going through and have suffered. Anyone else wants to talk about like the setting or the themes of the show? Another point you want to make?
To jump off of what Casfe was saying about how you can compare it to my world. I also like how at one episode, I think it's episode 14, where they meet the fortune teller, and it's this village where everybody bases their entire life and decision-making skills around what this fortune teller tells them to do. And when the characters find out that she was wrong, that volcano's about to explode, you need to go. I love that it almost becomes like you can almost compare it to what's going on now with science deniers, not just with climate change, but also with COVID and people who refuse to wear masks and whatnot. It's like, who needs your science? We're listening to the fortune teller. We're listening to that. We're listening to this one thing and just ignoring all common sense, no matter even when it's staring them right in the face. So I found that really funny, and yeah, it hit a little hard.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Now, the fortune teller episode is great because yes, it's definitely, it shows the ignorance of these people and they're so relying on this one thing and they don't want to think for themselves. But it's also, the shipping episode. It functions as two things. It's like, hey, it's just like real life. Where I'm going to listen to what the guy in the news says. You even know what he's saying is even probably most likely lies, or it's super opinionated. But it also functions as like, good old Ain Katara shipping. I love it. So that's great. No, great point. Any other kind of points you guys want to make in terms of the themes or the cultures that are explored in this series before we move on to characters?
I do. Recently, I've been watching the YouTube channel World War II. It's a YouTube channel that covers like World War II, like week by week as it happened 80 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
And they've been going a lot of detail about stuff that's been happening in Asia, like with China and Japan. And to really fully understand that, you actually have to go, further back in history, because with history you have to understand the things that came before. It's the same people who did the Great War channel that did the same thing for World War One.
Cool.
And what's interesting is about Avatar, a lot of the central tension of Avatar is heavily influenced by like Japan and China during the like late 19th and early 20th century. At one point China was one of the biggest empires in the world, and over time it started to lose its dominance, getting influenced and colonized by foreign powers. And then you had Japan as a rising power in the Pacific, and them actually starting to expand their empire, which of course the Fire Nation is heavily inspired by the Imperial Japan and their colonization of China and taking over portions of it, which would then later on go into World War II as that theater of the war. So it's really interesting learning about those events and seeing how Avatar heavily borrowed and inspired by those events, with just how some of these nations are depicted, some of their systems, and how the cultures were affected. And these are some of the brutality and the genocide that happened in real life compared to how a kids show would depict that in almost a more, I guess, a less extreme manner that you would think, but it still shows it.
No, yeah, it still shows it, and yeah, I mean, I think it's right there with you. I agree with you. I mean, the Fire Nation's obviously Imperial Japan from World War II. Before then, even when they were trying to expand their empire in the South Pacific, and yeah, I always thought that the Earth Kingdom was supposed to be China. This very large nation that is just losing its grip due to inside influences and also outside influences. That as well. And I always thought that was cool that they did that. I mean, yeah, for this is a good way, I think, to expose kids to geopolitical situations. This is a great show to do that. It's here's
a good introductory primer to the rape of Nanking.
Yeah. It's just
baby's first war crime.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is. It acts as that gateway, and then you can finally teach them about this, or you can make comparisons. I think this is great. If I was a social studies teacher, I'd be like, okay, can you find the similarities between the things in Avatar, The Last Airbender, and the relationship between Japan and China? I think that would be great.
There is
Nash-
one more
Nash
thing I
Woman
want to
in
add.
general.
We want to add Deadpool.
Their depiction of the Fire Nation, they could have easily went with the almost like mustache twirling, like faceless bad guys, but some of the characters they depict from the Fire Nation perspective have a lot more depth to them, like Prince Zuko,
Yes.
Iroh, and then of course they meet some when they finally do go to the Fire Nation, they meet some people, kind of see things from the Fire Nation's perspective, and because it could have been very easy for them just to paint them all as like I said, the mustache twirling bad guys.
Yes. When we get to, I mean, you're absolutely right. When we like our how we look at the Fire Nation initially, it's primarily Zuko, obviously, Admiral Zhao or Commander Zhao, and then later becomes Admiral Zhao, voiced by Jason Isaacs, by the way, American with his American voice.
I did not
And,
recognize him at first.
I know. I'm like, oh, that was Jason Isaac. Yeah, he's using his American accent. It's like, oh shit, I can't believe that's him. Played for those who don't know, Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter, Draco's father, and I mean, so many. He played the evil British guy in The Patriot.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he's like a Nazi in that fucking movie. And then of course
forget
Iroh. And oh yeah, that's true. And he was, and of course we also see through the perspective of Iroh. And mostly like Zuko, it's this kid who is just trying to adhere to the tenets of the Fire Nation to get the respect of his father. Like he's like, I gotta stay on the program, even though he deep down, he's filled with all this rage and this hate, and he's like, but you're better than that. But he's like, no, I have to be good for my nation, for my father. You have Zhao, who is a complete just goose stepping Fire Nation soldier, very very selfish, and just wanting to work his way up the ladder for his own gains and things, and hurt anyone in the process. Then you have Iroh, who is that older individual who is, yes, he's been a part of this war, but because he's been exposed to it for so long, it's made him wiser, and it's hurt him, as we find out later on in the series in very deep personal ways. And he doesn't have that in him to fight anymore because he knows like what's actually going on, and he's there more for just his nephew. But we get to see, at least initially, different perspectives of Fire Nation citizens. And yes, by the time we get into season 3, we see good people that live there. We see people who are just being indoctrinated. We see people who are just forced to survive. It's not that the people of the Fire Nation are bad people. It's just that the government is so tyrannical, and it's being operated by a genocidal maniac. That is what the problem is. Not so much the people. It's people just like, we just have to live here. It's very interesting. And yeah, it gets deeper and complicated. You can make comparisons to Nazi Germany. You can make comparisons to Imperial Japan, or like any of these countries which we perceive as, oh, they're the bad guys, they're evil, but it's more than that. It's more than that. And I like that. I like that when we go later on the seasons, we see that. Any other last minute thoughts about just the settings or the themes before we start talking about some of the characters?
I truly like. Oh, sorry.
You want to go?
Bostic, you go ahead, and then Stefan, you can go ahead.
Sure. Kind of to your point, we actually going to see the propaganda in the theater episode.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is a great one, and it's probably one of the lightest episodes in season 3. But thinking about it now, it does have a bit of a dark turn to it.
Oh yeah.
And even on the flip side, I think in the first season, the Jet episode, we kind of see the opposite. We see someone who will be like, I want to get the Fire Nation no matter what. We kind of see someone on the other side who has good intentions, but he's willing to hurt innocent lives to destroy the Fire Nation. Kind of, it's like, well, you're gonna be as bad as them to win the war, kind of.
That is it's funny. I forgot Jets in the first season. You're absolutely right. And that episode, yeah, it shows you, I think, for the first time, because we obviously we've been exposed to Zuko and Iroh and Zhao, but yeah, we just see that Fire Nation colony in the Earth Kingdom, and how even though there's like they're just living there, they're trying to eke out an existence, a life, for themselves and their family, and you have this guerrilla. I mean, very much a guerrilla fighter. Him as other people in Jet, who like he's been horrifically touched by this war, and he can't tell the difference anymore between good and evil. He looks at the Fire Nation, says, they took something from me, I'm going to take everything from them, even despite like those people just living their lives and they're innocent. That's a great point. Very good point. that shows that, like, yeah, it's on both sides. You know, the war is absolutely hell, and you have people that have been emotionally torn down by it, and they don't want to look deeper into it. They just want to paint it as white hats or black hats. Good point. Stefan, do you have something to say?
Well, to build further on that, I think one of the best things that Avatar does is show that after 100 years, people are tired. You know, you have people going
Yeah.
into slavery. You touch on the loss of hope and what it means to just survive because you have so many villages that these kids go to where people are just surviving and they're doing it in their own way. And what's so cool to me, even, you know, just in season one, and they touch on it in season 2 and 3 as well, but you see how all these people are getting through their days. You know, you have the fortune teller where people are getting through by listening to her. You have where they go to that one earth village where all the earthbending men have been taken away for slavery. Really.
Slave labor.
And, yeah. And you have Katara like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, what are you doing? You know, we're slaves.
Did your balls drop off? Come on, let's do it.
Like,
Yeah.
well, listen, girl, we've been through this for 100 years. Who are you going to come and listen to? But it's just really something to see this kids show, and I put quotes around that, go through not just the big things in war, not only the leaders, and you know, they really take you to that little guy. They show you the civilians that get caught up in it, and that is always something that I'll have to give Avatar.
I think they do in the best way possible. Is like they do show you the little guy, and it's because of the small group that we follow. I mean, it's Aang, it's Katara, and Sokka, and you know, Appa and Momo, of course, they're animal companions. But it's just them, and because it's just like they don't have armies at their command. They're not answering to generals. It's just them. That's it. And so they're able to interact with all these different people, whether they are from the Earth Nation or the Water Tribes or even the Fire Nation, and they can have those intimate small experiences. And you get to see different perspectives on the war, whether, like you said, whether it be people who have been in prison or used as slave labor, whether you see people who are from the enemy nation, but they're just trying to live out their lives the best way they can do it. Or all these different cultures who are just kind of trying to put their head in the sand and just ignore it because it's just the way, or just this is the way it is. This is the way it's been for 100 years. No, it's a great point. I did want to move on. Just speaking of the characters now, just of our primary cast. I mean, there are so many characters in this show, and I mean, we could just do a whole discussion on the side characters in season 1. We brought up Jet, who I think is very interesting. Definitely one of the best supporting characters in the series.
Yeah, he's great.
He's so good. He's so good. But I did want to focus at least on Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Zuko and Iroh, and then we maybe go to Zhao to a certain degree. But I want to talk about Aang first because, I love Aang as a character. I mean, it's very interesting with him because we learn more as the season goes, along. It's like, okay, we know he was trapped. Like he was an Avatar. The whole Avatar process, like every, at the time the Avatar dies, it's reincarnation, and he's born into the next nation, whether it be, earth, fire, water, or air. And this time it is air. But for whatever reason, he vanishes. After the death of the last Avatar, which is Roku, who was of the Fire Nation, Aang became the next one. And he vanished, just like Katara says in the opening. And we find him, he's in that iceberg. And I just love it. How, even though we were just like in that opening, how we're talking about this war, this genocide, and the Fire Nation is just taking over everything. Like the first thing, like when Aang sees Katara, it's not like, I have this destiny, I need to destroy the Fire Lords. It's like, you want to go penguin sledding with me? I like in that one line, I think that says so much about the character and his perspective. And it's both funny, but also kind of sad in a way, because it's like he's still a kid. He's still 12 years old. But he's very ignorant to like everything that has transpired at the same time, and I just kind of love that relax. I mean, he has that care. He is very much representative of his culture, that very carefree, that like I'm open to trying new things and make new friends everywhere. That's what I'm all about, baby. That's who I am, and I think we need a protagonist like that in a show like this. Like some people have criticized it, and I understand. It's like you need to take this shit seriously, kid. Like especially the first, but he's still a child. and he's still trying to figure these things out, and he's learning through Katara and Sokka, where he would be lost without them. There's no doubt about that. Especially Katara. She's just rock.
And he does take his job seriously when he absolutely has to. When shit goes down, he can handle himself, and he's not going to hold back.
Exactly. No, I mean, yeah, we've seen him. We've seen him when he loses his fucking shit, especially when, I mean, his friends are threatened, especially if Katara is threatened or Appa is threatened or something like that. But I just really love Aang. Did anyone want to talk about Aang briefly? What you love about the character, just like about the character? Vanny, go ahead.
I think one of the things that I was really impressed with was when you have a character like Avatar that is meant to be sort of like a holy one or like a messiah, sort of like God tier level kind of character, you kind of expect them to be almost like flawless or kind of like that Rey syndrome where she's just good at everything and didn't really earn it. And I do like the fact that he is flawed. Like I remember one of the earlier episodes that they go to a village and everyone treats him like God. Like, you're the Avatar, you're amazing. And his friends are going like, tone your shit down, buddy. And he's like, no, I like this. This is fun. Yeah. And it's a nice, I think even a subtle commentary on child celebrity status too, when like they throw everything at you, but then there's also there's gonna be a reality. Like you're not a god, you're a war hero at best. But the first part of that word is war.
Yeah.
And to your point, like as there's later episodes when he starts to see the real ravages of what's been kind of going on, and you see like those quieter moments too, it does give him that nice layer of complexity that we sure as hell did not see during the film. And and everything that was really interesting that was in the last part of the conversation was completely thrown out the window when they did that live action adaptation. Where,
I know,
like cultural appropriation and like straight up racism, all the horrible things like that movie just did. But they do Aang really, really well for that. And it kind of goes back to the idea like he's supposed to be a kid. You're supposed to get wowed by the bright shiny things and everybody loving you. A kid's supposed to be that way because that's how they learn. That's how they learn to be humble too. And you start to see that growth of maturity through the rest of the season too.
I agree. No, you do see that. Like at first he's like, because after the first 2 episodes, he's like, we're gonna go do this and do that. And the episode you're talking about is the Kyoshi Island when he goes there. And we have Foamy Mouth guy who is like my favorite. Tertiary background character who just fucking fanboys out when he sees Aang.
That's my favorite joke. He does the little thing.
Seizure.
He's so good. It's like that man had a seizure. Is he okay? And yeah, he's just he's caught up in it because he's never been exposed to that before. And he's a kid.
Right
he's like,
behind Cabbage guy.
Yeah. And he's just like, I'm just really enjoying myself. And I mean, I love it that where Katara is the one to go. All right. Take it easy. Like man, fucking Aang, thank God for Katara. Because I wanna talk about Katara in a bit. But like she's the one that really does like, you gotta come on. Listen, I know you're cute and shit, but you gotta stop this. You gotta get on the ball.
She's the one who grabs him by the arm and tells him, no, the plot is this way.
Yeah, she very much is that kind of. He needs a good woman in his life. That's what it is. Anyone else have any thoughts on Aang as a character? Especially in season 1.
I just want to say, just building off what Vanister's just mentioned, everything I said about my, somewhat misgivings about cultural appropriation with this show, do not apply to that movie. That movie can go fuck itself.
Yeah. That movie is that's all. I've talked about that film before many times, and
like that movie's a hard fuck you.
It is. Oh, it is. As an adaptation. It changed the trajectory of the franchise. It had that effect on it, which I will never get over. I'll always be a little resentful towards that. But yeah. I like we've all been talking about Aang. Like he has this very carefree attitude, and he has his friends with him. I do like that. And like to your point, Vanny, I do like it when they show his flaws at the same time, and where he does things I think a lot of kids would do. Like he is so, and you got to think about it too. Aang, probably more than anyone, has lost the most. He's lost his entire culture. Didn't just lose his father figure in Monkey Atsu. His fucking people are dead. He is as the show points out, he is the last Airbender. And they showcase this in all sorts of ways. Like when he finds Monkey Atsu's body, and he really does freak out for the first time, and he's calmed down. Because of Katara and Sokka, and that's when you realize, okay, this is the start of them becoming a family, because that is his family, because he has no one else. and you also see his fear of losing that family multiple times. And even if he does bad things because he wants to keep that family together, like there's that one episode where Katara and Sokka meet their father's friend Bato of the Water Tribe, and where he says like, "Oh, I could take you to see your father at this point." And they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go see our dad," and Aang is so fucking terrified that they're gonna leave him, and so he like lies to them about like their father getting like a message or something about sending it to them. And I like that they showed that because that's what a kid would do. They would lie because they're afraid, because they don't want to lose something. I even also liked it when it's that one of the best episodes of season 1. It's up there with like the Blue Spirit to me, with Zuko and Aang. But it's the Storm episode where we finally learn like what happened with Aang, and where he was told at a young age, when he shouldn't have been told that, but they're like, the Airmans realized we're going to be at war with the Fire Nation soon. And they told him when he was so young that you're going to be the Avatar, you need to do all this shit. And he fucking freaks out, and he just leaves and he runs away, and he has this guilt which he carries with him all the time. And the person he tells that to is Katara. And so I just really like that we had, despite this wonderful carefree nature of the character, and he's so funny, and I love his interactions, his little jokes with Sokka. It's great, but he does have these flawed, dark moments. And I think that's really cool that they did that with him. And they continue on with it in season 2 and, of course, in season 3. Go ahead, Dipple.
It's funny because I was going to expand on something what you just said. Because throughout the first season, we see that interesting arc about Aang, about, we find out the moment he found out he was the Avatar and he's going to be taken away, that he fled.
Yes.
And that's how he ended up in the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
And that the reason the Earth nomads were wiped out was because of him. That was the sole reason why the Fire Nation attacked.
Because they wanted to kill him. Yeah.
Yeah, so he has that survivor's guilt because they attacked because of him, and he wasn't there to help them. Like, that's kind of when he finds Monkey Atsu's body, that's kind of what's going through his head. It's like, all these people died because of me, because I wasn't there to save them.
Yeah.
And it's funny that we, through like 12 episodes, we had that whole entire arc of his survival, finding out about his survivor guilt.
That's right. Yeah, because it's like episode 12 or something when we get to the Storm episode, where we learn about him and Zuko. You're correct. You want to say something, Casfe?
I was just gonna build on that, I guess, that like while Aang is flawed, and I'm glad that they show that, it's like it just kind of, I think the Storm is the episode that shows us that pretty much everyone was a victim of circumstance. Like with Aang, the air nomads, they did the best they could under the circumstances because they were panicking too. But they didn't approach Aang the way he needed to be approached in the midst of all that anxiety. Like they were taking away his father figure. They weren't giving him that positive reinforcement he needed. Like, because later in the series, Katara points out that's what he needs in order to learn and grow. And they didn't really give him that. And it's just because they didn't know how to deal with him, and they were panicking and he was panicking, and it's all just tragic.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's weird because the air nomad culture is like, yes, I guess they do have children, but you never knew his mother or father. And so I can imagine like someone like Aang, he yearns for that, paternal or maternal figure constantly. And the fact that they would just suddenly rip that away from him, of course that's his reaction, that he would want to run away because he's scared. So great point to bring up. If we can move on from Aang, I do want to talk about probably the most important character to Aang. I think one of the, when I think of like incredibly well written, just animated female characters, Katara is the one that always comes up in my mind. Of course, famously voiced by Mae Whitman, who has done so many projects over the last 20 years. Played the daughter in Independence Day. Played Bill Pullman's daughter in that. Yes. But I am a huge fan of Katara. And like, she is really the first character we're introduced to, like her and her brother in Avatar. She's the one that narrates it. She's the one that narrates that famous opening. It's like, and then the Fire Nation attacked, and the Avatar was gone for 100 fucking years. But I love that she's such a strong maternal figure, and she lives in such a repressive and sexist society that is kind of the Water Tribe, which I thought was really interesting to me. And like Sokka, like, he's like, "Yeah, you're a girl. I don't, what are you gonna do? Throw your magic water at me?" Like, he's so dismissive of her. But I love how passionate she is. I love, her maternal instincts, and she's a kick-ass fighter as well. What do you guys think of Katara? Because I just think that she's probably one of the standouts of the entire series and one of the best female characters, I think, in animation in general.
Well, without pointing out the obvious, because I agree with everything you just said, I just keep thinking about, like, when she finds out in the the North Pole. She finds out in the North Pole that, like, women aren't allowed to waterbend, and she just loses her fucking shit, and she challenges that guy, even though she knows she's probably going to lose to him. She just doesn't care. She has a point to prove, and she's doing it. And I mean, given that even today it's so hard to get people to take feminism seriously, it's just so important to have a character like that.
I agree. I mean, that character must be so important. Like, I just appreciate her because I think she's well voice acted and well written and things, and she's a badass, and she's a great person to be with Aang. I'm a Katane shipper, goddammit. I'll tell you what, that right now. Don't bring that Zutara nonsense in here. Why do you want her to go with the villain? What the hell's wrong with you people? Wait, I know he gets better. But come on, Jesus Christ! Like, right off the bat, why?
No, I'm a Zutara fan.
Don't get out of here.
Seriously,
get out of here. No, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing in the Avatar community of people that absolutely ship either Katara Aang or Katara Zuko. That's a big thing.
Wow.
But no, you're right. It's I love that episode because it's interesting because it shows how flawed these. Yeah, even though we're on the good guy side of the Water Tribe, it's like it still shows you how flawed they are. Their society, how they're very obviously very sexist, very demeaning towards women. They are pretty much just in these caretaking roles. They're healers. That's the only thing you can learn about waterbending. You got to heal. And Katara, because of the fact that the men of her tribe are just gone, and because Sokka initially has this kind of like immature attitude towards the war, he thinks he needs to do like, I'm going to be a soldier, but he doesn't really understand what he actually needs to do to stand up. I mean, she's the leader of her people. And that's the reason why she is the way she is, why she's a maternal figure, why people like look up to her so much. I think why Aang goes for her, not because, obviously he's attracted to her and he loves her, but because without her, the gang would have fallen apart. I mean, she is the one that brings everybody together. Even like when we get to season 2 and her and Toph are constantly butting heads because they're so different from each other. It's like she's the one that keeps that group intact. And why she's just kind of integral to their success. Any other thoughts on Katara as a character, or like any moments with her that really stuck out to you?
Well,
I mean, just the moment that she's teaching Aang waterbending in season 1, and he just completely outshines her, and to see how much this thing means to her, and how this kid comes along. Yeah, he's the Avatar, but he's still a kid in her eyes, and you can see that throughout the series and how much she needs that reinforcement. But to see her just grow throughout the season it is an amazing thing, and then Aang just kind of takes that away from her.
Well, it's I know what episode you're talking about. You're talking specifically probably about the waterbending scroll episode where her desire to waterbend circumvents her typical, judgment, which is like, she pretty much makes the best decisions consistently. But at that point, it's like, yeah, we'll steal from pirates. I'm sure nothing bad will happen. And even Aang's like, what did you do? They're trying to kill us.
She's the last waterbender of her tribe, so it's like she and Aang are so similar in that regard. There are a lot of parallels there, but she's just a tiny bit older and more experienced, and like I think that's what pushes him to be his best self.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times I agree with you. A lot of times when he strives to be the best, his best version of himself, it is for Katara because of various things, because they're similar to each other, also because he loves her. Definitely, you want to say something?
Well, to add to what you guys were saying, they bonded over the fact that they lost parental
Yeah.
figures.
Yeah.
Katara lost her mother, Aang lost Monkey. Shoot, I always mess up his name. Monkey Yatsu.
Monkeyatsu. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yatsu.
they like in the Air Temple episode, they bond over the fact that they share this loss of this parental figures. That's kind of
Mhm.
what cemented their feelings for each other. And yeah, and like Katara, she pretty much carries the whole party on her back throughout the whole first season. Just keep
Yes.
everybody on track and trying to get them to the water tribe in the north. But is it the south? I always get mixed up.
Yep. You're going to the Northern Water Tribe. 'Cause
Okay,
they live in
Northern
the
Water
south.
Tribe. And yeah, and then seeing her get sidelined by everybody, even though she single-handedly brought them all here. Because Sokka, he goes off, joins the warriors, and Aang's avatar. And then she, like you guys were saying, like, oh, the women are just the healers. So seeing her, the fact she gets sidelined so easily, even though she literally pretty much carried the rest of the party on her back to get there, was just, you can definitely see why she was so angry, upset. Besides just the general sexist of the situation, that she earned her right to be there by getting everyone there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we do see that, especially in the 3-part kind of like finale of the season with the waterbending master of Paku, and then with in that 2-part finale when the Fire Nation finally invades the Northern Water Tribe. Well, moving on from Katara, unless anyone has any last minute things they want to point out with her, before we move on to her brother Sokka. Any other final thoughts? Okay, cool. So again, contain all the way. God damn it, get out of here, Zutara. Anyway, we will now move on to Sokka, who who doesn't love Sokka? I think he is very much he's the comedic character. He's the comic relief, which I think a series like this needs. And he starts out again very flawed. Like everyone else in the show, very flawed. He is a sexist. He is representative, I think, of just his culture, where men are held in high regard and women are not. But I do love that, while remaining consistently funny throughout the entire series, he learns. He becomes a better individual. He understands that his behavior initially is bad. He doesn't maintain that men are better than women or anything like that. He learns over time, fairly quickly too, and it's done in a very organic way. But I love Sokka, and despite being the non-bender of the group, he is kind of the brains of it. He's the one that he thinks through, like, okay, like we can't rely on bending. We have to do something else. Like he was very much a strategic thinker. And even though he struggles to become aware over time, like it's difficult for him throughout the entire season. It's like his greatest thing is his mind and his sarcasm, which I love. So I'm a big Sokka fan. I love his evolution through the series. Any thoughts in regards to Sokka as a character?
Yeah. The thing about Sokka is he's a comic relief character, and it can be so easy to make a comic relief character that's just annoying and constantly throwing out jokes that isn't funny. Like Jar Jar comes to mind, or a more recent example would be Flash in the theatrical cut of Justice League, where it's just one joke after another and they won't stop, and feels like, all right, are you going to take anything seriously at all? Here, they know how to space out the jokes with Sokka, to where, yeah, when they come, they're funny, but there's not so many packed together that it takes you out of the seriousness of the story and what's going on. Like, when shit goes down, he knows what's going on, and he knows, even though he's kind of clumsy, he knows that, all right, I have to really, like, think, and I have to come at this, and I have to fight, and I have to protect my sister and this kid who's become my friend. And yeah, you're right. He grows as the series goes on. He becomes more mature, and he becomes more competent at what he's doing. And yeah, he's the ideal comic relief character.
Yeah, he's a competent. You're right. He's a competent comic relief character. He's not bumbling. I don't think there funny things happen to him, of course, but he's not a bumbling. Yeah. He's not stupid, which I like.
Right.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Sokka as a character, or a particular moment with Sokka that you really enjoyed? That spoke to you.
I think like when you take Sokka, Katara, and Aang as a trio, really, because they pretty much form the core around which the show's built. It's kind of emblematic of what makes the show so successful.
Mm-hmm.
In that Sokka is clearly a comedic relief, but he's not a device.
Yes,
like he has an arc. He has nuance to him. Just as okay, Aang is Neo. He's the one.
Yeah.
But he also has this this survivor's guilt and this tragedy and this this darker aspect to him that he is struggling with. And Katara as well is not just like she isn't there just for the sake of, oh, we need a female character. Like she is she has goals, she has desires, she has motivations, and she's got purpose, and she also is in a lot of ways the foundation upon which the other two characters rely on. And I think when you have that, it's really no wonder why this show, we're talking about a show that's nearly 20 years old.
Yeah.
Because
very good point.
Because of these three purposefully designed characters.
It's like the group wouldn't have succeeded if they're all a central component of it. Like Aang and Katara wouldn't have gotten far without Sokka. Katara and Sokka wouldn't have gotten far without Aang. Like it's the three of them coming together to achieve this is so incredibly important.
Aang would
I
be
agree.
doomed without the two of them.
Yeah, he would be. He would be dead. They'd all be dead. They'd all get lost. That's how it would be. They need each other, and that's why their dynamic works so well, and why it holds up nearly 20 years later. Why it's just so good. Sokka is when I think of like a comic relief character in an animated show, one that's not annoying, he's just there for the joke. He's also nuanced. He does funny stuff, but he also has that dry sense of humor too. It's that sarcasm. It's like, God, that was just fucking funny. It took you a second, like, oh wow, that was actually really clever what he said, because he's smart. Like I really like that about the character. Of course, famously voiced by Jack DeSena, who does such a fantastic job. But no, I'm a huge fan of Sokka. Give that man all the support he needs.
Well, it's really at the end of season 1 too, where you can see his growth. It's kind of like a check, where you have this character come up, the fiance of his moon love, if you will. Yeah. Right, where her fiance to be comes up, and he's pretty much exactly like how Sokka was at the beginning of the season.
Good point.
Where he doesn't know anything about the Fire Nation. They have all these outdated info. He can't even pronounce the guy's name right. He doesn't care. He just wants to be a soldier. And he doesn't really know what war is. And you have Sokka kind of coming in, not even that long, but almost already a veteran. And he wouldn't be that person if he hadn't had this journey that he's had and all this growth.
You're right. That guy is supposed to show us. Look how far Sokka has come compared to that ignorant motherfucker.
He's truly a soldier at that point.
He is. No, he is. Despite his age, and that's the thing too. We got to think you forget, but his relationship with Yue, having that relationship, and then losing it, and like having her die, become like a new entity basically. Sokka. I mean, he has had many loves in his life. He definitely has, and he lost a lot. He's like, Jesus Christ, I just met this girl, I fell in love, and now she's dead. That takes a toll on you. You gotta forget.
Yeah.
At one point, he tells Zuko, "Yeah, my girlfriend turned into the moon."
That's rough, buddy.
Yeah, that's rough, buddy. What else are you supposed to say to that?
Yeah. Did you have something you want to say, Casfe?
Only that I always love it when those types of characters are portrayed so heroically. Like, he's kind of goofy, but he's unconventionally smart, because the kids who are like that in real life, they deal with so much from the adults in their lives, getting constantly shamed by teachers who don't quite get it and everything. So when they see someone like Sokka, it probably makes them feel a bit better about themselves.
Unconventional. He's like unconventional thinker. Yeah, totally. So moving on from our trio of heroes, we get to probably the most morally complex character in the entire series, and the villain, if you will, of season 1, if you want to think of him that way, at least initially, I think, for most of the season. But that is Prince Zuko, voiced by Dante Bosco, Rufio from Hook, of course. When you think about a character who has such a dark background, You know, when it comes to like a children's program, I mean, can't get any better or darker than I think someone like Zuko, where he is the banished prince, physically deformed by his father, is sent out there on a mission specifically designed for him to fail at, and yet he is still doing it because he wants that love from his incredibly abusive father, which is so funny because it's totally a Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader allegory, and fucking Fire Lord Ozai's voiced by Mark Hamill, which I think is very funny. But so indoctrinated by his nation's thinking, despite obviously not being that kind of person at all. Like, despite this forgive the pun, fiery exterior, this dark exterior is hardened individual who does these bad things. Like, deep down, he's not that. And you can tell. You can even you occasionally see it. But he's so morally complex in what he wants. And you do feel for him. He's just a person. He's a child that wants to go home. He's a teenager who wants to go home, even despite that home abusing him. He is, I think you can make an argument. One of the most complex and well-written characters in the show, certainly has, I think, the best arc of the entire series. The one that is so emotional and so sad. But what a great villain overall in the first season. One that you really feel for and care about, and that's complicated. But I love the character of Zuko. Any thoughts on Zuko?
Yeah. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So I think of him. He's the main antagonist or at least the rival character to Aang, and I think Lord Zhao is probably the main villain of season 1. I mean, General Zhao, right?
Commander, then Admiral Zhao.
Right. You see, I think throughout the show, I mean, in the first episode, kind of him and his relationship with his uncle, and his uncle. I think even as a kid was one of my favorite parts, just because of how much of Uncle Iroh fucks with him.
He's trying to teach him the best way possible.
And is the probably only family member who's probably ever given him love and support.
Yes.
And I think you see probably his best episode next to Storm is when he's in the Blue Spirit and he actually decides to save Aang. Sure, out of selfish reasons, so he could capture him later, but it's still like, wow, it's like the first glimpse of maybe there is a good person inside of him.
Yeah.
And also, there's just one irony of Dante Bosco voicing Zuko, and at the same year, American Dragon Jake Long playing a fire-breathing dragon character. I'm like,
oh, I know. Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. That's crazy. No, I mean, yeah, they're both the fire, using fire abilities. Yeah, that's crazy. Two characters. Same year, 2005. You're right. Yeah, I guess when you think about Zuko, him and Iroh go hand in hand. It's that relationship. I think that's the thing. Like, without Iroh, Zuko would be lost. He would totally be lost. And voiced famously by Mako, the late great Mako, who actually sadly died. Wasn't able to complete his lines for season 3. Did finish them for season 2. They replaced him with Greg Baldwin, who also voiced Aku in the last season of Samurai Jack in season 5. But they do go hand in hand, and that relationship is integral to Zuko's maturity and changing as a character. And like when he's in his darkest moments, his uncle, even when fucking like Zuko inevitably goes against his uncle later on, without Iroh, he wouldn't become the person we would later see later on. But I love that relationship, and it also keeps, I think, Zuko grounded, where he's not just a mustache twirling villain. He's not just this angry kid, because he does have some emotional guidance, positive emotional guidance from his uncle, which is so great. Any other thoughts on Zuko or Iroh at this point?
Well, I mean, I was gonna go off the Blue Spirit episode, and also please. The Storm. What? Hello?
No, I said please do so.
Oh, well, what I was saying was, I really liked the parallels that were drawn between him and Aang, where, like, I guess I just have a soft spot for that whole "we're not so different" trope. Yeah. And when we get more and more into the flashback episodes later in season 1, I believe it was the Storm, where like they both had flashbacks that were like juxtaposed with each other. and you really see like the kind of guilt and shame that they both have within themselves. And then in the very next episode, Aang says to Zuko, "Do you think we could have been friends?" And you can tell that really pierces Zuko's armor in a big way, and all he can do is just take off.
I wanted to ask you guys, like, I'm glad you brought that up. Like our favorite moments, our favorite episodes, of course, also our favorite moments from the series, from the season 1, and that is definitely one of my favorites. When Aang, where yes, Zuko as the Blue Spirit goes to rescue Aang for selfish reasons to get him from Zhao, but then Aang decides to save him, despite learning that Blue Spirit was indeed Zuko. And it's that moment when they're just there in that forest, and Aang's like in that tree, and he's talking to Zuko, and Zuko's lying there looking at him, and Aang says that lines, "Could you think we could have been friends?" And then Zuko instantly attacks him. But there is that pause. You're right, there is that pause. You can tell Zuko thought about that, and he still attacks him. I love that. That Blue Spirit is my favorite episode of that season, because it's so powerful. It's so emotional. And it really just shows, like, yeah, those two characters working together and then becoming enemies again, even if they don't want to be. Which I really like that. Yeah, and I also just love, in regards to Zuko, and you guys can bounce off of this too, how he is just so despised by other people within the Fire Nation, particularly like his rivalry with Zhao, who looks down upon him, despite being the crown prince. Like everywhere they go, and there's a Fire Nation, like command or something, they always look down on him. And how Zhao speaks to him, and Zhao is just, he is very much the villain. He's like, this guy's not going to learn any lessons. He is stuck in his ways. He's cruel. He wants to commit genocide. Wants to increase his own renown and power base. But I did find it interesting, like, the Zuko still wants to find that love from his country, despite his country, like, or at least the certain people who are in charge of it. They hate him so much.
And that makes him a more interesting villain than if he hadn't done anything wrong, if everybody loved him and he was on top of the world, still looking for this Avatar kid. The fact that he has been banished and everyone does look down upon him, it gives him more of a sense of determination and more of a goal in capturing the Avatar than if he had been, like I said earlier, on top of everything.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, it makes us understand. Whether or not we want him to capture Aang or not, it's just like, we get it. He has a very understandable, discernible motivation, and it makes sense. And it's just to feel, to feel accepted by his family. That's
almost
what
like
it is.
Stockholm syndrome in a way, because it's like they literally scarred him for life, and he's still like, I want to come home. I want to be with my dad.
Yeah, it's like, despite my dad like really just beating me, literally physically beat me and scarring me, deforming me. I just want my dad's love. It's like, God, that is a Stockholm relationship and a half. It totally is. It really shows. I mean, again, that's the dark stuff. I mean, we also get into child abuse in this series. Yeah. That's a whole other subject, and how that continues on into book 2 and also in book 3 with Ozai, and also his relationship with Azula later on. Is there any other, like, talking about all these characters, everyone has any other thoughts about them, please feel free to chime in. But is there a particular, and I'll go down the line for everybody at this point. Is there a particular episode or moment from this series that just like really impressed you or spoke to you, or like fight scene or something like, this is like, someone should watch this, and this is the reason why you should watch this show? We'll start with you, Deadpool. Anything off the top of your head that you went, this episode or this moment or something, or this character?
Well, I'll start with episode. I think the third episode, the Air Temple. I think it, just because the tonal shift of the episode, because it's kind of like happy-go-lucky, Aang scoofing around, and then he finds Monkey Yatsu's body, and then everything just completely changes tone. It goes from that happy kid show to something really serious and dark.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a great moment when he finds all the dead bodies.
And for a character, Zuko, I think is probably the most well-written character of the show. It'd be like, because you root for him, you feel for him, and you actually kind of want him to succeed and capture the Avatar. Just because you're so invested in him.
You want him to be happy. You want him, or at least to realize the error of his ways, and like, no, join the good guys. We see there's good in you. We see that, but it's more complicated. It takes longer for other people because of the abuse that he's endured. Go on. No, perfect. Totally understand. Anything else?
Yeah, it'd be like if you were rooting for Darth Vader throughout Star Wars.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's what I think the sequel series was trying to do with Kylo Ren, and kind of fell short in many ways. They were trying to make you like this character and feel for this character, and I don't think they didn't stick the landing.
There's a lot of Star Wars DNA in Avatar. You can tell. I mean, in fact, they got an actor from Star Wars to be one of them.
And then
the
it's
villains.
funny because in the sequel series, you can see some of the Avatar DNA in it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I can see that.
Because of how much it influenced it. Like, it influenced just pop culture and storytelling together. Because like Dave Filoni directed a lot of these episodes.
True. That's right. He directed, season 1. I should have brought this up earlier. Yes, Dave Filoni was the director and one of the writers for a lot of these episodes. Season 1 specifically. And
literally all the best episodes.
Yeah,
you go through the Wikipedia, he directs all the best episodes.
And then I think this is what got him the job to do Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Because then he didn't come back to do book 2 or book 3. I don't think he's involved in those. But yeah, I totally forgot that he did a lot of book 1. That's right. Yeah, clearly. Obviously, yeah, there's a lot of Avatar and DNA in Star Wars. Love it takes both. That's really cool. No, great. Thank you for bringing that up.
Star Wars DNA, and I noticed a lot of Lord of the Rings DNA in it too.
Oh, definitely.
How it's structured and how it's one long journey to get to this specific end goal.
It's funny you say, because there's actually a quote from the creator saying they created Avatar, and their inspirations was Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter.
I can see that.
Yeah, Harry Potter also makes sense, especially with Jason Isaacs being there.
Yeah, there you go. There's the Harry Potter influence. No, both great points. Thomas Ace Rock, you have a favorite episode or favorite moment or favorite character?
What's the big furry dragon thing?
Appa?
Appa.
He's an air bison.
Yeah, I fucking love that thing.
He's great.
I want one of those. In terms of I don't know this series well enough to really say that I have a favorite moment yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I've watched most of the first season. And it was when it first came on Netflix. I tried to go back to it, and but I do. There's, the moment that you were talking about with Zuko and Aang in that question where he says, do you think we could have been friends? In thinking about that moment, the scene it reminded me of is the diner scene from Heat between Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. They look at each other and it's kind of I don't know. It just had it had that similar kind of vibe for me.
I get you. These two legends, these two very important figures, kind of in a normal conversation.
It's just it's almost like the separation between the two of them is almost largely arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
That there are commonalities between the two of them.
Yeah,
and they both have severe trauma and tragedy that they're wading through and trying to figure out, and they're doing it as very young people, without much support or guidance from the adults in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the things I admire about the show as a whole, or the things I'm getting from it are not necessarily these moments, but that it's cool that there's a show that's aimed at young people that treats its audience not like young people. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. It's not dumbing it down. It's it's treating kids with respect. This is one of those shows that does this. We're going to have some dark themes in this show, and we know that kids will be able to handle it.
And it's not dark for just the sake of being edgelord bullshit.
Yes.
It's no. These are human things that you are going to deal with, or possibly even dealing with right now. And we're hoping that you can explore this stuff through this show, which I think is what makes it so successful.
Agreed. Totally agree. No, thank you. Austin, what about yourself? Character, moment, episode?
So I think as the series as a whole, my favorite character is Sokka. Just we always are seeing him growing. I think it was a lot of the relatability as not being very athletic and being more smart and creative and having a weird way of thinking about things. In terms of I think another thing I wanted to say was D. Bradley Baker. I wanted to give him a shout because he plays both Momo and
He does.
I mean, and every single stormtrooper in Star Wars in the Clone Wars. So, but
That's right.
Just I think such a talented voice actor. I kind of a split between two favorite episodes. The King Boomy one.
Oh yeah, Boomy's great.
I think that episode is so lovely, and I love not even really the twist, but how much that relationship means to Aang and what we see in the future, without saying spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
And the Kyoshi Warriors one, not just because it has all the very funny Aang doing the diss thing and the foam guys, but it also has like this very touching story about feminism and about trying to, about empathy and trying to understand and just saying, okay, I was wrong. Let me learn.
Yeah. No, great pick. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the show it's I guess it's a very feminist show, but it's not the kind of it's the thing where it weaves it through the narrative. It's not that we're gonna just kind of be blunt about it. It's like, no, we're gonna handle this with care. We're gonna show it, and it's well written. I think that's what I really admire about it. When it has, because it is because it has these very well written and strong female characters, but it's not just we're just showing like here this it is. It's like they're actually doing the legwork with them, which I think is great.
And
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was just the last point. It even kind of gives us a piece of lore where it's like, oh, so we're learning about this is like the past Earth avatar and what she was like, and it sort of filling out this world and teaching us.
The lore, there's so that's why it's like hard to like even do. I realize like just talking about this now, like season 1, there's so much content. There's so much here within 20 episodes. Like you mentioned, Boomy, which I love. I love King Boomy. He's so funny, and he's important to Aang for various reasons. But no, the lore and the history. There's so much fucking lore. There's so much background and history. Like the previous avatars, Roku and Kyoshi, who we learn about. In these that first that episode where they go to Kyoshi Island. And later on, when we go through the series, we learn more about Kyoshi and the Kyoshi Warriors. And Suki is such a great character and an important person for Sokka, and obviously an eventual love interest and girlfriend. You're right. Chris Harris, what about yourself? Moment, character, episode?
One particular moment that really stuck out to me, especially because they tried doing this in the movie and like multiple things they botched it, is episode 6, where they meet, I think his name is Haru, who's the earthbender who gets captured.
Yeah, Haru.
And then Katara lets herself get captured, like try and rescue him, and they take her to the ship that's filled with earthbenders, and they've just lost all hope because there's no Earth around them. They can't get away. They can't fight their way out. And then eventually, Katara gives her speeches and inspires them to fight back, and reveals that like the coal that they've been using to fuel the ships is Earth, so they can use that to fight their way out. And yeah, I think it's just a really like powerful episode that sells. I think that's the one that like officially sold me on Katara as a character and how valuable she is to the group and to the story overall.
Nice. Very good. Stefan, what about yourself? Character, moment, episode?
So it's so hard to get a favorite for me, so I'm just gonna be a little bit greedy.
I'll be greedy, so you can go ahead and do
it. So for me, one would be the Winter Solstice, where you see, Aang coming in, and you're really like, wow, this kid has no idea. Everybody's looking at this kid, and he has no idea, and he's trying to calm down the spirit. He's never encountered the spirit before in his life. He doesn't know what to do. And that truly shows you, like, Aang is not the one. I mean, he is, but in so many ways, he's not yet. And
he hasn't gotten to that point yet. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'd say the second one would be the Northern Air Temple, where him,
Mm.
Sokka, and Katara go to this place, and he's like, "Yeah, this was one of my homes," and they go in and they see these people settled in it, and it truly brings you face to face with how Aang is 112 years old.
Yeah.
And the world has moved on in so many ways without him. And he has to face that. And
Like,
it's not none of these people's fault. It just happened.
It's yeah, because he gets excited because initially he thinks people are there. He thinks air nomads are there, but then it's it's other
Exactly.
people that are just occupying because it's changed. It's been 100 years. You're absolutely right about that.
And that's a great it's a great way to show kids, at least it showed me at the time, that things change. And it's not always a bad thing.
Yes,
But it is important at the same time to adhere to tradition as well, because they do touch on that.
they do. They do. They go hand in hand change and following tradition. I like that. A balance, if you will, which is what the Avatar's about. Balance. Cassie,
Yes,
what about
sir.
yourself? Moment, character, or episode?
I mean, this is kind of obvious, I guess, but I'm going to go with the season 1 finale, the Siege of the North. Apart from that scene with Katara and the whole waterbending showdown, which is definitely my favorite, just when it gets to the big climax of it all with the ocean and moon spirit and the fact that there are it's obvious now, even members of the Fire Nation don't want Admiral Zhao to do what he's doing. And Iroh was always a sympathetic character, but when you see that he is very much on the same side as the rest of the gang as far as like, no, don't kill the moon spirit, and then spoiler alert, it happens, and you don't know yet what's going to happen after that, and it's like, this is the worst thing. This is the thing they were trying to prevent, and that's when the show really stops pulling punches and lets you know, like, shit is getting real.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the textbook example of the darkest hour, and that really got to me. And the way they resolved it was also very poetic and gut-wrenching.
Oh yeah, no, I'm ready. The Siege of the North. Why? That's just some great animation too, and everything. And you're right. Like when everyone's telling Zhao, don't do this. Don't. And he's like, I'm gonna fucking do it anyway. And so when he eventually, spoilers, dies, it's like, good. You fucking get, you piece of shit. By the way,
more than that.
I'll say, because we get one Zhao, because Zhao is dead by the end of the season 1, and we get a little reference to him in season 2, because he's the guy that goes to the library and caused all the kerfuffle to happen. But we do get a Zhao cameo in Korra, like book 2 or something. I think it was like book 2 or book 3, and he's punished, where he spends the rest of his life like lost in this mist, claiming that I'm Zhao the Conqueror. He's just insane. And it's like, oh my god, he's been there for like 60 or 70 years, just lost and talking to himself. He's like a Schmeagol character. I'm glad you brought that up. And everyone's just like, don't fucking do it. Please. And yeah, when he gets his comeuppance, I love that. No, great pick. And Xavier, what about yourself? Character, moment, episode.
I think for me, my favorite episode is the episode with King Boomy. The first time we meet him. It's also the first time that at least I think it's the first time that we meet the Earth Kingdom. And I was just like, I love these guys. I love the Earth Nation. I want to be a part of it. And also just the moment when like the twist at the end, like I kind of knew it was gonna happen.
Right.
Where he takes off his robe, but I still love everyone's reaction when it happens, as like the crystals, close up on Sokka's face and everything. And so I'm like, yeah, I really like that episode.
Boomy's a great character. Like talking about this, I realized, God, there's so many supporting characters that come up like only a couple episodes. Like maybe they appear once in season 1, they're in season 2 and season 3, but it just makes me realize like I got to do maybe we'll do it someday. Avatar: Last Airbender supporting characters. We could talk about all the supporting characters, or maybe not a part of the game, or they're not like the main villains, but we can at least mention them and talk about them what we like about them. But Boomy, I'm right there with you, man. Boomy is he's a mad genius, as Aang would say, and he's so funny, and I love his voice actor.
Yeah, don't forget everyone's favorite supporting character, the cabbage guy.
I love Cabbage Guy.
Yeah,
My
like,
cabbages.
I love that in Legend of Korra he has now a corporation. I'm like, I died
Yes.
laughing when I saw that. I was like,
I'm good for
that's
him.
amazing.
Good for
Yeah,
him. And
I'm
he
happy
fucking
for him.
deserved it. He went through everyone. The gang put him through a lot of torture, destroying his
Those kids ruined
business.
his life.
They did.
That's true. Yeah.
But he got it. He got it. I mean, the company got dissolved in Korra, but he got a little success.
I was gonna say one more thing that
Please.
that because one of my complaints about season one that I always thought like maybe there was too much filler, like it's like can we just get to the point kind of, but after having this conversation with you all, like I think that you need those filler episodes because like you said it helps us get a spotlight on the little people, like the people who may not matter, or like it really shows like this is a battle for the world. It's not just just these three people. It's like for everybody. So I appreciate the quote unquote filler episodes.
Because there are episodes where I think for the most part Avatar is pretty good about like, okay, we're gonna really like we episode to episode it has like there's an important character moment for somebody, a realization, or it's moving the plot forward. I will say to be critical. I'm actually glad you brought, because I totally forgot because it's such a forgetful thing. There is some filler in Avatar: Last Airbender in season 1. There's one episode in particular. You guys probably know what I'm going to say if you've seen it. The Divide. The Divide, which even the creators themselves have said, we know it's not very good. They even make fun of that episode later on in season 3. And you mentioned earlier, Austin, with the Ember Island players, where they talk about the Divide and go, "Yeah, we can just skip this one." I thought that was good. But you're right. But you're right, Xavier. I mean, a lot of the quote unquote filler episodes, I don't even think of them as filler, but they're just like there's like either something emotional at stake, or there's a character lesson learned, or it's you're learning more about the world for the most part, except for the Divide. Divide's the one I'm like, that one could have went. I would have been fine with that. Now, Van, what about you? Character, moment, episode.
Everything with Iroh. Everything with him. Yeah. Like, hold on, let me finish my roast duck. But first,
my tea.
Yes, and his tea. Just his everything, and kind of going back to what was said earlier, where the reminder that the Fire Nation is not just season 1 Zuko or the corrupt government, that there are good people there too. And I think that's what Iroh, especially early in the show, represents, is just it's not a one note universe. Like just because we're the Fire Nation does not mean we're all bad or anything like that. And I'm a big fan of the voice actor. I think his name was like Mako. It was
Mako.
Yeah. Everything I've ever seen him in previously, like I really, really enjoyed, and he just brought such warmth and such a great balance to the show that every time he was on, he was great. He's my Zoidberg, but like more intelligent and all that. Just every time he's on, it's just a highlight.
Sure. Oh no, I mean he is also a very comedic character.
Oh yeah.
But there is such a warmth from him. You're right. That's a great way to describe him. There's such a warmth from him, and it's why why Zuko needs him desperately. Because I think if he was not there, Zuko would. I think we wouldn't. I think like our own perceptions of Zuko would also be changed too. I think he helps us warm up to Zuko more as a character. Like he's very necessary. And Mako, for those who don't know, like I mean, obviously voiced Aku and Samurai Jack. And if like one of my favorite fantasy films, Conan the Barbarian, he plays the wizard in Conan the Barbarian. He also narrates, the movie as well. Yep. But great pick. Yeah. And did you have like an episode as well?
Honestly, it was that earlier episode. Like I did like those are the ones that kind of stuck out the most for me. It was the early episode where like Ong is just treated like that little godchild, and he's just just to see that hubris in him too. I think it just stuck out because, and that was the first real episode where I realized that my preconceptions of the show were very wrong. Like I was certainly like from the beginning was like, okay, like you caught my attention. That was the first episode where like, okay, I get you. And then the later episodes when he starts to find out what happened to Ong, and the first when he sees shit get real dark, when he sees what happened to the Airbenders, when you learn about why he ran away and all that stuff, like it feels so natural for it. And I think just like seeing the dichotomy and just just seeing Ang being all not necessarily all over the place, but just being a kid. Like I really
child.
but that first episode where he was treated like that, like where he just kind of fell into it so easily. Like other sitcoms and other animated cartoons have done stuff like that, where the hero kind of gets washed up in a thing, and it feels very out of place. But this is the first time, at least in recent memory, where it felt real. Like I felt like, yeah, of course, this makes a lot of sense, and it does help that they did age the kid so young too, where he's supposed to make these kinds of mistakes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's it'll always stick out. Sorry.
No, thank you. I think we're going into detail. For myself, I mean, I've already talked about it, but again, it's in terms of episodes. If I had to pick, like, it's hard for me to pick one, but two favorite, definitely The Storm, and definitely the Blue Spirit. The Storm, obviously, because we get the background regards to Aang, what happened, which we were all questioning. Zuko, what happened to him? Why he is the way he is, and the tragedy of that. Both of these characters and how they're, confiding in certain people. Like with Aang, he's telling Katara, this person who he was the first person he sees when he wakes up after 100 years, the person he's obviously falling in love with, and he's the person that he trusts the most to tell this to her. To I love that. It really deepens the relationship, as we see in the book 2 and then in book 3. And then with Zuko and Iroh telling the story of Zuko, and then Zuko finally being there and listening to it and hearing Iroh's perspective, and the crew, I think, of Zuko's ship having more respect for him after that. I really like that. And of course, the Blue Spirit, as we as Kaz Phase, you brought this up, that moment between Aang and Zuko, just like, you think we could have been friends? I love that. That says so much in that pregnant pause before Zuko attacks is so good to me. And that's the choreography. Like, again, we haven't really talked about, but the animation in this series, and it gets better as the series goes on into season 2 and especially into season 3, these incredible duels and shit. I also like another moment I'll say. I really like the moment where we see the first Agni Kai. We all understand the concept of like these trial by combat kind of things, where it's between Zhao and Zuko, and they have that music playing. The music to this series is amazing. God, yes. It's so goddamn good. But I love that first firebending duel between Zhao and Zuko, and those how drums. It's like the drums, and how like it's a duel to the death. And Zuko chooses not to kill Zhao. You should have killed that motherfucker. You should have done. Got a double tap. Could have saved us a lot of time and hardship. But that was great. But I bet in characters, it's hard because I really love all these characters in various ways. But I mean, I always go back to Katara for me. I love her character, and I guess Zuko as well. But everyone is fantastic in this show. It's just season 1. It's like, it has some flaws. Some filler episodes. The Divide didn't need it. The animation. The animation is good, and I think it's just when you compare it to the animation in the fight choreography in season 2 and season 3, it just gets better and better and better. And so it's almost not fair. But that's when they really start to get confident in their abilities and like, what kind of things we can do with all these elements and earth and water and fire and air. And I love it. Any like other last minute thoughts about this show that you guys wanted to bring up, maybe have not been discussed or emphasized yet?
Who's the studio that did the animation for this?
That's a good question. I want to say it's I think it's a Korean studio.
Is it the studio that did the Boondocks?
Let me see, because that was a Korean studio, right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I know there was the overseas.
I think it is. Let me look. I got it right here. Let's see here.
The character designs are very similar.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Animators. JM Animation. I think this is listed on Wikipedia. JM Animation did 32 episodes. DR Movie did 19 episodes, and Moy Animation did 10 episodes. I think GM Animation is the one from South Korea. I wonder. Maybe it's Moy. I don't know. I just know. But I know a South Korean studio primarily worked on this.
I was gonna say that the show is always considered an anime, and I think one thing that's also interesting about it is that when you think of anime, you think of like these big, like bulking, like real muscular characters. And none of the characters, well, for now in the first season, they're not like that. They're skinny and they're just normal looking people.
Starving occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Before we wrap it? I mean, there's so much other details we can go into with this season, but anything else?
I just have one tiny story. about when I was younger. I remember the movie coming out. My mom was like, "Okay, you can go with your brother and because my twin sister really wanted to go see it. You can go with your older brother and your sister to go see this, or your dad can take you to the pool." I went to the pool. I'm very happy with my decision to this day.
Made the right decision. No, I mean the movie. I mean we can have a whole discussion about the movie. It's just, it's an abomination. It's awful.
You can put the movie on the movie poll.
Yeah, I could do that for bad movies or something. I wanted to do like another horror movie next week that we can potentially discuss. I'm gonna put the one that came in second, the one that was very popular next Alien, which is Scream. So Scream's gonna go back up there, and then I'll put some other ones. And but yeah, I'll go in more details on that in a second. But yeah, that kind of wraps up our discussion about Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water. Obviously, there's so many other details we can go into, so many other characters and supporting characters, and I'd love to talk about them someday. I want to talk more about Jet and some of these other, like, even these characters that only show up for like one episode or something. It's a great series, and I want to thank everyone here: Deadpool, Thomas, Osnick, Chris Ayers, Stefan, Kazfe, me, M. Xavier, Vanny for being a part of this. And thank everyone for listening. I hope you guys have been liking these so far. This is the second episode, and we'll change things along the way. We'll take feedback and stuff. And like I said, these will also be on YouTube as well. But thank you so much for listening.